Hey guys, welcome to the channel. It's Sam here from Gemini-tkd, and today we're going to be talking about if a student of martial arts can disown their instructor. Voila! Booyah! Nice and positive as always. Hope you're doing well, hope you're enjoying the sun. Now let's get into business. So, something came to my mind quite recently, and that was about instructors disowning their students. And that got me thinking, and I was like, you know what? Surely the opposite can be said to be equally true as well in certain circumstances. Can a student disown their instructor? Now, those who know me, those who've met me, know I'm very much anti-establishment. I'm very libertarian. I'm very much sort of individual liberties, and what is good for you should take priority. I'm not centralist minded. I'm not communal minded per se. So if you as a student, and I'm talking maybe from like a Western perspective, because let's be honest, most people in this day and age do martial arts as a hobby. In the Western hemisphere anyway, it's very, very rare you're going to get somebody who considers themselves like a lifelong living martial artist. And those that you do get who see themselves as a lifelong living martial artist will still generally have a life to lead. They still have a family to feed. They still have like work to go to. They have a mortgage to pay. They've got to pay bills and put food on the table. So you're not going to get people in the Western Hemisphere generally living in caves who've invested their whole life to martial arts and nothing else. For like 99% of students in the West, we're hobbyists, plain and simple. And many people probably think that I'm pretty, they may not like me saying that, but that's pretty much the accurate description. You're a hobbyist. I'm a hobbyist. I'm not going to like get rid of every single thing that I own or get rid of my career or my job or whatever for the benefit of martial arts. What's more important to you? Being able to do take a sarjang flawlessly or put food on your table and provide for your family? Because I know which one has priority for me. And why am I saying this is because actually when I started martial arts, my base style is taekwondo. I started in taekwondo and then I transitioned into other things. When I started taekwondo, it was ITF, but I soon transitioned over to WT. Now the WT, or WTF as it was called at the time, the WT instructor I had was very much of that mindset where he expected 110%. I could write a book about that. Now's not really the time to kind of like delve into that, but what I will take from that aspect and bring it to this table is the fact that he expected the students to be overly committed to taekwondo. And if there's a day when you're meant to be training and you actually said, look, I'm sorry, I've got exams coming up, I've got to revise for my exams, which I actually did at the time, being a teenager at the time, or there's a family event going on, I haven't seen my grandparents in X amount of years and they're on death's door, so I need to take this evening off so I can go and see them. He wouldn't like it. I'd be like, no, you need to be committed to taekwondo. Fuck taekwondo. Just there are things more important than taekwondo. There's many things more important than taekwondo. But if the instructor feels as though they can disown a student for various different reasons, which may be legit, they may be a bit far-fetched, reasons I've heard for instructors claiming to disown students, which maybe before I get into that, I will say I feel the whole concept of an instructor disowning a student very stupid. I really do. It seems to be kind of like steeped in Eastern mysticism and this whole master-student sort of weird quasi-philosophical dynamic, which to me just is bullshit. If you're paying your instructor, he's a coach, he's a teacher. He's not your master, he's not your grandmaster, he's not your nim. He's just some guy, probably has a job himself, and you're paying him like, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 lessons a week to teach you some basic martial arts. Basically, you're paying for a service. That's essentially what it is, and that's how over time I've come to see that student-teacher relationship. If things develop from there and you become friends, which I wouldn't recommend for various different reasons, but if things do develop, kudos to you. But for the most part, they're selling their services and you're paying for their services. So they're not this master kind of figure, but for them to then kind of pretend that they are the master and they're like, oh, you've got to have unquestioning loyalty to me. Don't go and learn from other masters because I'm your master. That's a betrayal of trust. And all this kind of nonsense. It's like, no, I'm sorry, but if I do come across a coach who I feel is actually going to give me what I want from martial arts, whether it be sparring, whether it be self-defense, whatever, being proactive self-defense, I'll go to them. I don't owe you anything. You've got enough money. And actually, all the money I've paid you over the years, it's probably not worth the self-defense you're going to teach me. I might as well get mugged and probably lose less money than all the money I've put towards your tuition. But that being said, the instructors, I feel from my experience, then tend to kind of think they have some sort of ownership over their students. Like, oh, you're loyal to me and nobody else. You're loyal to my school, to my club, with some shitty ass name. And this creates some sort of like mystic bond that we have, and you're not allowed to betray the trust that I have in you. All this kind of stuff, which can verge on cultism, it can verge on abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse as well, which again I am a victim of from my martial arts training in the early days. But then if a student starts to behave or act or believe in certain things which don't align with the instructor's worldview, the instructor, again from my experience, tends to feel as though they have a right to then disown that student and kick them out of school and banish them. And I've seen it happen. I have seen it happen. It is sad. Like fully grown adults dressed up in dobok or gis, demanding this unquestioning loyalty to you. And if you dare question their ways as a student, and it's fully within a student's right to question. That is how you learn. You question everything. You question paradigms. You question methods. You question beliefs. You question things and you critique. Because doubt is what will give you an education at the end of the day, not blind loyalty. But if you dare question these instructors, they see that as a, to quote a common phrase, disrespect. And I've seen it. Instructors then kick out their students. A student is beginning to develop and grow faster than the instructor would like. They're gone. They're disowned. A student who then actually voices up and actually says that they're not happy with the tuition they're receiving for various different reasons, they're disowned. And what usually happens to these disowned students is that word travels around the martial arts community. And certainly when I was doing taekwondo, it was a very small knit circle. British taekwondo, which used to be British Taekwondo Control Board. Very small, closely knit circles. And word travels fast. And all it takes is for somebody in a position of power, and a power can abuse, for them to go around this circle and say, oh, this student is now disowned. Don't listen to them. They're evil. They're bad. Oh my goodness, let's get the helicopters to come and arrest them. Well, the helicopter won't arrest the person, but the police officers in the helicopter will arrest people. That's what I'm trying to say. But if the instructor has a right to do that, or a perceived right to do that, that's them perceiving they have ownership over you as a person, as the student, in more ways than one. But surely then, isn't it right, or cannot not be reasoned, that then the student has an equal right to disown an instructor? Let's say this situation. You're a student. You want to be, I don't know, gearing up for UFC. You want to be a good fighter. You want to compete in UFC and become like Conor McGregor or, Anderson Silva, somebody like this. So you you go to a taekwondo school. We'll use taekwondo as the example. And all the instructor teaches you to do is pumsi. All the basics, going up and down the hall, doing low block, ari maki, 1, two, three, one after another. And the student eventually will be like, I'm paying for this. I'm paying the instructor to teach me this. It's like, this isn't going to help me. So then the student could very also, you know what, thanks, but I don't think this isn't good for my self-interests. This isn't in my best interest. So thank you, but I'm going to go elsewhere. The student, in that case, can disown that instructor. It's a bit of a more extreme case. Let's talk about abuse, because again, from my experience of being abused by a martial arts instructor, that gives somebody the moral and perhaps even the legal right to actually disown their instructor and not develop Stockholm syndrome. A student who's being abused then could say, well, you know what, I'm not paying an instructor week in, week out to physically abuse me, emotionally abuse me, psychologically abuse me, make me feel like crap. It's always me that the instructor's kind of like pushing to do competitions. If I miss one training session in, I don't know, 6 months, God forbid, I'm going to get ridiculed by the instructor for that. He's going to discriminate against me. Or I've not learned my wonderful pumsi, and the instructor then pulls me up in front of a lesson. He's like, oh, you've not been studying, in front of everybody else. There's a time and a place to pull somebody aside, and it's not in front of hundreds of other people who have nothing to do with it. But if that is kind of like the abuse that this student is experiencing from the instructor, it's fully within that student's right to say, you know what, fuck off. I'm not coming here. I'm not paying to be abused. I'm not coming here to be ridiculed week in, week out. I'm not sitting at home before the lesson, like for an hour beforehand, anxious beyond belief, growing depressed and developing PTSD because I know that as soon as I go to these lessons, I'm going to be abused. So then the student could then actually say, actually, I don't want anything to do with this instructor. I'm going to leave this school. I can actually publicly say, I'm not a student of this instructor anymore. Maybe on a resume, you'd actually have to put some martial arts resume, CV, you'd have to put that. It's like, what experiences do you have? Yeah, I learned, Shotokan karate under Bob Smith. I then learned jiu-jitsu under Steve Jones. I learned taekwondo from the years 1999 to 2006 under Dick, I don't know, whatever his name is. Put it on a resume. Then if people then question it and say, oh, okay, how about you tell us your experiences that you had with Dick when you learned taekwondo. And I feel it's good. It's actually perfectly reasonable for the student to then turn around and say, you know what, I've disowned that instructor. Of course, that would generate discourse and debate. People go, oh gosh, that's that's something to say of quite a bit of gravity. Would you mind explaining that a bit more? In which case, then you can explore it with that person more and say, well, actually, yeah, when I started, blah, 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 then X, Y, and Z happened. Then eventually I felt it was in my best interest to actually say, look, I don't feel as though this tuition is benefiting me. I don't feel as though that I'm getting anything out of this. I don't feel as though that this person, this instructor, has my best interest at heart or my development at the forefront of what they're doing. There's no person-centered care there. There's no unconditional positive regard. So I've disowned them, and I'd rather not be associated with them. I don't see them as an instructor anymore. And especially in the case that if you then go off and do other martial arts afterwards, which I did in my case, I went to, the next martial art I went to after Taekwondo was Kyokushin, and I learned more from Kyokushin on many different levels to anything I'd learned from Taekwondo. So to me, the Kyokushin actually trumped most of the Taekwondo I'd learned. And I was actively using more of the Kyokushin because I didn't want to be associated with this Taekwondo instructor I had. And I feel that any student has a perfect right to do that. If the instructor feels as though they have that ownership over the students to say, yes, I can own you, I can disown you, it's only fair that the student has equal ownership of the instructor. Point being, when next time you hear an instructor maybe saying, oh, we had a so-and-so as a student, yeah, and we disowned them. Look at it sometimes and think, well, what's the other side of the story you have to say? Because there's always two sides to a conversation. There's always two sides to a story. And it'll be interesting just to see what the student has to say, because a student might turn around and actually say, you know what, actually no, I disowned the instructor because A, B, C happened, X, Y, and Z happened, so I said bye-bye. Guys, let me know what you think. Do you agree with what I've said? Do you have anything to add to what I said? Do you want to challenge anything I've said? Please do. I'd love to get into a debate. And let me know in that comment section down below. It's there for a reason. Leave a comment. Anyway, guys, stay safe, train hard, keep listening to Metallica because they're the best band around, and I'll see you on the next video. Booyah!